Welcome back, everyone, to Haven for Heroes show. I got Cyberspace Steve again from Cyberspace Comics. We thought it would be fun. We revealed last week, if you hadn't watched last week, we talked about The Badger comic, number 69, but we also revealed at the end Decorum. You actually can read it better on the backside, but a Hickman book called Decorum. We decided this is another book I found at Baltimore Comic-Con, that we would read it and then talk about what we thought about it, and it'll lead right into actually the reason we're doing this show. Stay tuned for Trade Waiting. What did you think, Steve, of Decorum?
I was hyped because I have enjoyed Hickman's stuff in the past, especially on Fantastic Four and his own stuff, East to West. So I was expecting some really cool ideas. And he gets into his world building, but I think he's into his world building a little too much.
Yeah.
And there's not enough like cool character moments to be like, oh, I want to come back and know more about this character, because the world building just doesn't necessarily do enough where you're like, oh, I need to know more about that world. You still need to have like a character connection to make the story enjoyable.
Which I really felt that was out of his, what do you call it? Like what he usually does is really have really good character building. That's what Hickman is known for, for that, and not so much this crazy world building. And I think he got so deep in the weeds. I don't know, I hate, everybody who's been watching me a long time know, I hate prose in comics. Just leave them out. Just leave them out. Have the artist draw like a 90 panel piece of artwork that show, like he has this long.
Yep. We're not choosing to read novels. We're choosing to read comics, graphic novels.
When I turn this page, I don't think this is the first one either. Whenever I got to the first one that was like this, I got mad. I closed the book, I tossed it down, and I said no. I told Steve I'd read it.
Now, also, artwork is all over the board in this book. So we have
crazy.
If you don't mind, we have black and white with a splash of color.
Right.
Which the artwork looks cool, but let's have some uniformity maybe. But then in the beginning, there's some amazing artwork.
Yeah.
On the pirate scenes,
and it feels like a trade. It doesn't. That's why this is a perfect book for today. Because it feels like a trade.
I don't know if you can see this panel up here, but this is amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful illustration. Yeah. And
then we just, I don't know. And then we get this. Like they've decided to not finish the job, I guess. I don't know.
Well, and I do like black and white, and I do like when they use black and white and splash with color.
And maybe there's a reason that we haven't discovered yet as to why some of it's colored, some of it's not colored.
It's got to be obvious enough for the reader to pick up.
And also, we're following this courier the entire time, but I'm getting a feeling that the courier isn't even the main character in this book. It's going to be this assassin at the end, who gets 4 pages at the end of this really thick comic. I don't know. It didn't.
Or maybe she's not.
Or maybe she's not. I don't know. Yeah, here's more.
It builds up this courier. Yeah,
text pieces.
Yeah, it builds up the courier.
I do like. Okay, so when you read a Hickman book, you are in for. It's a very experiential type of read, though. Yeah. So look at it's almost like you're watching a movie. The way that this unfolds.
Right, and there's no words. And I love that.
It's really cool. It's got a cinematic aspect to it. Even this, okay, we got some credits, just like you do in the movies.
Yeah.
So his presentation is really cool. It just kind of falls flat in this specific comic.
This started to lose me when I started getting charts.
Oh, yeah, I don't need timelines yet. I mean, maybe on the 4th issue, I would be interested to know when did this all happen?
The history.
But off the bat, when you have no connection to any of it, it's
right.
What am I doing? So anyway,
you're wasting my time.
F falls flat for me.
For me too. And I don't like when reviews are like that, because I'd like to talk more about it. I mean, you can talk a lot about a book you don't like too, because there is a lot that is good in this book. Like he was talking about, that art in the beginning is great. That whole cinematic. He obviously wrote how he wanted it to look. I mean, there's no words, but there is a story, and the story's being told by the artist, and I freaking love when that happens. Give me lots of that. Don't give me whole pages of to read and charts and but
that flows really well into what you wanted to talk about today.
Yeah. So what I'm talking about today, I am, as a comic shop owner and a reader, I am really sick and tired of the 6-issue arc trade writing. Everything's written for the trade. It is very difficult to get people onto books. Issue 3, if you don't have issue 1 and 2. So I have to buy more issue 1s and 2s because 1s, get bought by people.
So you're looking at this from like a retailer perspective that you
partly,
don't like?
and my reading.
Okay, so let's go a little more into the retail
reading
aspect.
part and the retail
aspect.
Okay.
So as a retailer, it's frustrating for them to have a very
I have way
incomplete story,
Right.
I guess you would say.
Right. And I have way more competition in the trade space than I do in the floppy space.
Okay, so just as an illustration, we got some stuff here.
Right.
In case you don't know what we're talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah,
we're going to do quick information. This might seem basic to most of you, and I'm sure it will be. But initially, comic book storylines are published in a comic book.
You all know I call them floppies.
Floppies, yep.
There's other names for them.
So this is Walking Dead, number 32. And you can see here's a double split, a spread page there, yeah,
That was a great
you can
splash.
hold up.
Yeah, yep.
It was a cool reveal.
Yeah. That is a great reveal.
Once 6 or 5 or 4 issues, maybe 8 sometimes. It's never this. Oh, it's not always the same.
Right.
But once a certain number of issues come out that kind of complete one storyline, they republish those stories from the comic into a trade paperback or graphic novel. And again, you can see here's that exact same spread in this. This collects 6 issues. And then sometimes if the series is popular enough, they will reprint it again in a different format. This time it's a hardcover. This collects 2 of these books, which collects 12 of these floppies. And again, you're going to see that same spread is there. So it's the same story. It just goes on to live in different formats.
Right.
Some people prefer to read it in a hardcover. Some people prefer to read it in a trade paperback. Some people prefer to read it monthly as it comes out.
And it's all when you came to it, like...
Well, sometimes. I hate reading these because I feel like I'm going to rip it in half. I love reading comics.
Yep.
I like to see ads. It
Yep.
gives you a cool sense of time.
Little break, too.
Sometimes they have letters pages. I like the comic book experience the most. But I do appreciate a nice bookshelf type of thing. It looks really cool. It looks professional, almost, I guess you could say.
So that one
Appealing.
isn't like they've done so many printings of Walking Dead. There's one where when you stack them all together, you get a picture. This one is
on the spine.
on the
I love
spine.
that. I
That
love
is
when they do
killer.
that. Yep.
So when you have 10 issues, the more issues you add, the picture gets more and more full. And talk about how great it looks on your bookshelf.
It looks cool on the bookshelf.
Oh my
Yep.
God. I get so mad when I had a set of those and somebody bought like 2 out of the middle.
But that's annoying. but to get to an appealing trade paperback, the writer and artist have to have a story that kind of has beginning and end throughout all those 6 issues that are collected here. Because if you just had, stories ending on cliffhangers,
Right.
That's really unappealing for a single purchase of this book.
So although I've always talked a lot about how competition is healthy, certain competition is not. When you're competing with the exact same item at different price points that are more accessible than your store, it is difficult to compete with. Trade paperbacks are that way for me.
Okay, so what you're saying is this type of book
Right.
is not getting released just through Diamond or a comic book distributor. This is getting released through major book publisher into major bookstores and Amazon. And now they're going to hammer you on.
Yes, Amazon never sells at MSRP.
Right, so they're going to discount this heavily, and they might even be buying it. And they probably are buying much cheaper than comic dealers can pick this book up for.
Well, you think if their because I always talk about margins and volume, right? So you don't need to sell at high volume if you've got high margins. If you can, you're Bezos. But he doesn't need high margins because he has such ridiculous volume. Yeah. So if 90% of the people that need or want a trade paperback go to Amazon and just buy it from Amazon, let's say that's 10,000 people. 50 cents a book, you're making $5,000 every book. There is a lot of trades.
So there are. So storyline wise though, why does it bother? So if they're writing to make this book,
right?
Why does it upset you that the storyline is tailored to have a beginning and end every 6 issues, every 5 issues, sometimes 4 issues. Why does that bother you as,
It is
as a
vastly,
retailer?
mostly
why does
it
that
is
bother you?
6. Well, no, it's more personally that it bothers me. But
there's a retail aspect
There
to
is a retail aspect to it. You can't get people to jump onto a book because you're in the middle of an arc. If you don't have the 2 issues before that, it just happened with me with Destro. Guy comes and he goes, I missed Destro 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think I really want to read that.
Okay.
And I was like,
And let's say you got 3, 4, and 5 on the shelf,
yeah,
but you don't have 1 and 2.
right. And
So now you're not going to sell 3, 4, and 5,
Nope.
even though they're on your shelf.
Right.
That's the frustrating part from
Yeah.
a retailer's perspective.
now, if they were all beginning and ends at the same time, right? I could say, well, read 3, 4, and 5. I mean, you don't have to wait for 1 and 2 to read all of them.
Okay.
Because most people, they won't read 3, 4, and 5 before they get 1 and 2. Then 99% of the people won't do that.
But isn't this medium already built upon? You want to get on number 1? Like, isn't that
and the
kind of
collector's
how
aspect,
comics
but you
work?
can wait to get number 1 because you can still read 3, 4, and 5.
You can still enjoy it in the moment.
Right.
Okay.
You can
I got
enjoy each one as just a separate entity.
Okay.
And the other thing is, there used to be a lot of guys that didn't have a run. They weren't following any particular one. They came in and looked at the covers. Oh, that cover looks cool. They've never read that book before.
Right.
And they usually read Spider-Man, but they didn't pick up Spider-Man. A lot of collections I get that are like that. They're like, yeah, there's 4 or 5 Spider-Mans in a row, and then there's 2 Hulks.
Right.
And then
Okay.
there's 3 or 4 Thors. It's almost like
But is that the buyer you want? Don't you want the buyer that's going to want to buy that issue every month of that title?
I actually want both. I want both. I think you have less people jumping in on comics. Those are the people that jump on comics that come out of nowhere and start reading comics. Are the ones that are like, let me try this, let me try that. They're finding their space. They didn't grow up with them or something. It's very easy for them to jump in. Everything, especially it upsets me so much. The indies. The indies have no shot. Once number 1 comes off that, number 2 is half the order.
Oh, that's being generous.
That's being generous,
Yeah.
but I mean that's the rule of thumb.
Yes.
It isn't what always happens.
From the speculator's point of view,
Right. Well,
if
because
that book hits, number 2 is sometimes more expensive than number 1 because
sometimes because of the
you
lower
can't-
order number.
Because everybody dropped the
But if it doesn't have any first
the
appearance
order
or
on it.
anything in it, they don't care.
right. But I'm talking about when a book is a good read and everybody
Right.
wants to read it.
Right.
Okay.
That's
they
like-
bought 1. And especially actually by number 3, because by number 3, you put your order in and you don't know how number 1 sold yet.
Right.
So you're like, this book by number 3, I'm going to cut that in order in half.
Have in
of
half.
number 2.
Yeah.
Which is half of number 1.
Yeah, that's the bear beneath
Oh yeah.
beneath the trees. Beneath the trees.
The wind beneath my wings. Beneath the trees. where
Beneath
no
the
one can
trees. That
see
was
or
close.
something like that.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
it. That's it.
Yes. Yeah. 2 and 3 are way harder to
Such
find.
a sleeper, man,
Yeah.
just out of nowhere. It's fine. I mean, I know that this is a big moneymaker for the comic book companies, and I want them to survive too, so that's great. But, give us something that's like an anthology. Like, every book is a beginning, middle, and end of maybe 2 stories or 3 stories in one book. Showcase.
but-
Bring us back Showcase.
So
Bring
the
us
interesting
back
thing about that though is
House of Secrets.
they try that. Okay, from time to time they'll say, "Oh,
did
you know
it
what?
poorly."
Emmett has a good point of view. We're going to try to sell just 1 comic instead of 6, and we're going to give it a shot, and we're going to call it Spider-Man's Tangled Web, and we're going to get the best writers and artists. We're going to start off with Garth Ennis. We're going to put in some weird stuff once in a while. We're going to have some Ted McKeever in there with some Doctor Strange, and you know what? Darwin Cook's going to be in it. No one's buying this thing, and it get canceled at number 22. What happened? I feel like they try that, and it doesn't go anywhere.
Huh. Well, I'm sure you're right. I'm not familiar with that. That seems a little bit further back. That sounds like
About 2003, 2000.
that era is a tough era.
Maybe.
That's a
Maybe.
tough era. I think there's a lot of nostalgia. There's been a lot of nostalgia over the last 3 years. I don't think it's going away from the stuff that I've been selling. I see that this nostalgia is still there. They're not paying the type of prices they were paying in store for a lot of stuff. From the prices you've told me you're getting, I have to change my business plan. But
I'm always spotlighting
right.
weird things.
Right.
When I'm not telling
majority-
you that Stormwatch number 17 sold for $1.75. Like that's not really even noteworthy.
Right, right.
And there's way more of that than some really
I know.
cool, which is why I only have 5 to show you sometimes.
But and so now I'm gonna bring, we're not. This is not actually a reveal. We're not reading this right now. Maybe
Why
in the
not?
future. No, in the future someday. This is about what I'm talking about. Find you some books from the '80s. They weren't doing trade paperbacks. Really weren't invented. I mean, we had graphic novels, and you know, I have a specific for what I call a graphic novel. That means it's never been in a comic. It's not a reprint. It is original material. That's what I call any graphic novel, unless it's reprinting the graphic novel as a second print or something like that. It's still a graphic novel. But a lot of people interchange trade paperback with graphic novel. I don't. Also, some people think I have things that are called Prestige, came out like in the 80s with the square bounds. That's the Prestige format. It's not a graphic novel and it's not a trade paperback. But I understand it's, for a lot of people, it is the shorthand for what they are. But find you some comics from the 80s and read them and you'll see the story begins, middle, and ends
This happened
90% of the time.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, so when I started reading, it was still like that. So
Oh, the 60s were big.
I didn't start reading in the 60s, buddy.
But you started reading a lot of old books.
Yeah,
'cause your
but
dad
I mean,
had
when
them.
I started reading new books, though, like Dark Cloak #1, there's an ongoing story, but it's pretty self-contained.
Right.
Even like I thought my first FF was like 357,
Yeah.
and I wanted 356, but I didn't need it to understand what happened
Right.
in 357. But you know, with indie books, I do think it works really well for Walking Dead
Right.
to have these story arcs,
Right. Well,
a beginning and an end.
right. And again,
Now, but we're also not talking about a conglomerate owned
Right.
or corporation owned superhero. We're just
Right.
talking about a guy making his own zombie story.
Right, right.
Or independent, any other independent, even Decorum, which.
but I also think
I'm
it
sure
limits. I
probably
also think
reads
it
better
limits
in
the
the trade.
writers. I think it limits the writers when you have to do 6. So some stories feel stretched, and some stories feel sped up. Like, oh, I wish that was
Only
2 or 3 more
if
issues.
the writer is not great.
Oh man, 6 issues every time. That's a long.
That's a
book.
pretty
That's-
rigid. This is
that's
pretty rigid.
Yeah.
But this is a good read, man.
It was a really
all
good
of it,
wheel.
like-
Yeah.
It held together pretty well.
Kirkman is like, but like there's a lot of other guys that know. I mean, you know, there's long runners that are not like that.
Yeah, he this is almost like a corporate image, like
Right.
to have. Okay, we're gonna have comics. We're gonna have 6-issue trades. We're gonna have 12-issue hardcovers. You know, he's got that all built in. When even like his Oblivion song is really good, but even that is written the same structure: 6-issue
Right.
trades, 12-issue hardcovers. It's really good.
And then omnibuses. There's one back on top.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, then there's an even bigger one. I think when it's done well, from a reader's perspective, it's awesome. It's really cool to have that thicker story that's not just over in 20 pages or 22 pages.
Right.
You really get some fleshed out ideas, some good character moments. I like books that are written for a longer period of time. When I go to read books, I don't read just one issue. I read when the series is totally complete.
Complete.
I like to just kind of just get everything in, and like right now I'm reading X Factor from the 2000s by Peter David.
That's great.
And there's
great series.
50
One of my favorite
issues
series.
and then another 60 something on top. There's 100 something issues.
That's
I'm gonna
the
read.
one that starts with Matrix on the cover. Right?
Yeah, they're
I love what the
investigators.
where he sent his powers out. And
yeah. Oh, it's so
his,
good.
his doubles out and
So that's 100. Let's say it's 120 issues. That's 10 years of reading. If I'm reading that by the month, I'm not absorbing as much in as quick of a time as when I go and read 110 issues in 6 months.
yeah. I mean, I can't disagree with you.
So from a reader's perspective, I enjoy it thoroughly. We got one writer who's overseeing this whole huge epic it took him 10 years to create it. I'm, burning through it real quick.
Yep.
And it's just really enjoyable. Now, that's as a reader. As a collector, you're right. It can be frustrating because, I missed that issue. Or if you're not buying it monthly and you're just trying to read it now to start to find all those issues, yeah, it's hard. But the experience if you can do that, is rewarding.
Well, I still feel that like these books had the hero's journey. Most of the stories, and I 100% believe it was a selling factor back then when you're talking about spinny racks, and you go to your spinny rack, and what you bought last month probably wasn't there, right? Because they maybe had one of each book,
Sure,
maybe two if it was a really big place. So to have it one and done, if you went there with your 35 cents, what was this one back then? This one's a 75 cents. So I was probably a little bit older when this came. But when I started reading, it was 35 cents. If I went there with the 35 cents, I would buy one of the war book, whatever war book. If there wasn't a war book left, I might buy something else, superhero. It was definitely going to be DC. I didn't like Westerns, which was surprising because I feel like they're kind of almost war adjacent. Especially Hex. But yeah, I didn't buy that. All-Star Squadron was another favorite of mine.
So, but if that book's not there that month,
Right.
you're just buying any comic?
No, I would
Or
go through and I would pick one, but I would get a comic.
That's what I'm saying. You're just gonna
getting
buy
a
any comic though.
But if I knew I needed this, that I had to have the next issue, if it wasn't there, I probably would have bought baseball cards.
Okay. So you're talking about it as so it's frustrating from a collector's point of view, is what you're
Yeah.
saying. What about as a reader?
Well, I think as a reader, it's even more frustrating unless you're just going to trade wait. And I think trade waiting has killed so many independent writers and artists because we had talked about it before. Number one, 10,000 issues. Number two, you're lucky if it's 5,000. By number three, 3,000.
Okay.
By number four, cancel.
Yep.
And if that's a 6-issue arc, you haven't even got to issue 6.
Well, but you're talking about it as the creator or as a
Right.
follower. But I'm talking about from the reading experience. Like I'm talking about the construction of the comic itself. Would you prefer that it's just self-contained, or do you prefer? I'm only talking as a reader, not as a collector, as a retailer, or even as somebody trying to find all the pieces eventually and read it.
I prefer the self-contained.
Really?
Yeah, because of my, I can enjoy and I don't have to remember when I go to the next book what happened in the first book.
Okay.
So if I'm reading later and I don't have the run, I will read trades, but I won't be happy about it.
Speaking of reading, I wanted to point this out. In our previous video, I had some expensive books up here. I brought some books here that I've enjoyed reading because honestly, that's more important to me than the value of them.
Right.
It's the experience, and these are all shared experiences that I have enjoyed with family members. My wife and I enjoyed this Punisher series, which I thought was really good. Enjoyed it, yeah.
Actually, all of the Marvel Knights and Max Punishers are probably the best Punishers.
I haven't read the Max, but the Marvel Knights was really enjoyable. These FFs up here, my dad and I have enjoyed. That's what got him into comics, and then that kind of got me into comics, or definitely got me into comics. Not kind
Just
of.
a little.
Yeah. My son got this. I had not read this, but my son got me to read this. This is really excellent for young readers.
That's what I heard.
And
I carried it at the store.
I got this. My daughter really enjoys that one, as well as we read those series. This series is excellent for young girls.
Power Pack?
No. Well, sure, but Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane.
Mary Jane?
So good. It's like a high school drama with a little bit of Spider-Man action thrown in.
Right.
But the Spider-Man action doesn't matter at all.
Right.
It's all about the character interactions.
Awesome.
And she really enjoyed those.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to get my granddaughter into comics, but I mean, I've got her into, now she's such a great reader, and she's 13 now, so she's read all the Harry Potter. I have to find books for her because she eats them. Like, they're gone.
It's also difficult because, okay, I really like Swamp Thing. Like, you're gonna love Swamp Thing too, but that doesn't work that way. You have to find a way in that they're going to be able to grasp onto. Which, for me, like with the Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane, for my daughter, I'm like, all right, I think you're gonna love this. The dialogue is really fun. It's young feeling.
Right.
You're gonna like it. With this primer book for her, she loved it. It's about a girl who gets superpowers from different paints. So each different color of paint gives her a different power. And she's artistic too, so that helps, and it really she found a way in there.
And I'm having some success with that book also. So it seems to be really resonating with the young and especially girls, which we really need in comics.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is, I don't know, like, I don't know how appealing this is to a young girl or even Swamp Thing, to be honest.
No.
And so it's great that they're finding new
Right.
ways to bring
It's got to be over 85% male, and then the 15% that's left over for female. For young females, maybe 2% of the books are made
I don't even know
for
if
young,
it's that
or
currently.
maybe one.
Yeah, it's
like
tough.
there's like 2 or 3 books out there.
But some of it too is what you're saying though, is they're so dense and embroiled in telling this larger story that it is tough to permeate, especially if you're starting your first book.
Right.
Like where do I even start to read?
Right.
So I think you have some points there as far as the reading experience. It's rewarding, like I said, for people like me who are going to read the whole long haul.
Right.
But for someone who just wants to get a taste of Swamp Thing here or there, when they're writing for the trade, it is a harder experience to just get a taste.
Right.
It is almost more catered for long-term collectors and readers, because honestly, that is their market, though. Like, so their market is to sell to somebody who's going to come in every month and buy every month. So I think it's kind of a chicken or egg situation. Like, did they start writing that way because that's what we want?
They just copy success. Like they're like,
Right.
oh, this business is so easy. You just copy success. The only thing is then, like when it fails, then everybody has a failure on their hand. When it goes bad,
Yeah,
it's bad for everybody.
It does make it very insular.
Right.
So now you're just kind of just feeding on your own fan base and not
Right.
necessarily having good opportunities to grow it.
Yeah, and then like if you had your group of people that were just floppies, then you know, guys wouldn't have to cancel their book at number 4.
It's tough for indie guys, yeah.
The indie guys is really
It
tough.
is. But I
I've
don't
seen
know.
good
I
books.
I do really enjoy some of the decompressed storytelling if it's done well.
Well.
If they're just decompressing to sell more issues, you can see through that pretty easily, and
Yeah.
it's not as enjoyable.
Like Decorum.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I don't know the inside story on that one.
Look, this is so thing. You know what is the trade on this going to be look like?
Huge.
Six issues. It's going to be like
Huge. All right. I guess everybody at home, let us know if you prefer reading
right,
more stories like me, or
you
you
lo-
just want a one and done 22-page story. And
right. Do you
Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. I'm out.
read
says Emmett.
do you only read trades? Do you like do you like the mix? Do you like going back and forth? Because I think that's a portion of the business should be one and dones, and a portion of the business should go to these 6-issue arcs.
I like that.
Yeah,
like
I just think there should be room for all the different
So
versions.
in Jason Aaron's most recent run on Avengers,
Yeah.
there's a lot of this.
Yeah,
But then the best moment is there's a character moment of Hawkeye, just one issue on Hawkeye, not even written by Jason Aaron, and it's the best issue in the whole series. It's by Mark Russell, who's a fantastic writer.
right.
So yes, it's nice to have that back and forth. Want to show us?
Yeah, what do we got? Let's
do some more reading.
All right, so next week, if you enjoyed this, you've read Decorum, and you want to read the next book, this is a very popular book. Most of you have probably already read it. Crossover number 7. It's written by Chip Zdarsky. This is the book that was started by
Donny Cates, right?
Donny Cates.
Okay.
A few of the issues were written by different writers because it's about them because there's somebody killing all the comic book artists.
That's the premise,
And
the
characters.
original premise of the book for number 1.
Yeah, they're killing characters and writers.
Okay. Very meta.
Yeah.
Very meta.
Yeah, which I thought was a really good idea. Which, I bust on Johnny Cates a lot, but I'd like to say that, yes, he has a lot of good ideas. He does not have a lot of good endings.
Endings are the toughest to write, man.
Yeah.
Everybody's got so many expectations.
Yeah. And
I don't have much expectations of this because I've only read a few things by him, and they were good.
by Zdarsky?
But I'm thinking Donny Cates.
Cates.
Zdarsky, I don't know if I've read
no.
much. I can't think of anything I've read by him.
All right. Well, we'll find out next week. And you know what? Keep reading comics.